Jeff, what is an Enneagram and how does it help a writer create complex characters?
The Enneagram is a really valuable tool. It's a personality profiling system that is a mix of ancient wisdom about human nature and cutting-edge psychology. I was introduced to it by a friend of mine who was a top psychiatrist in New York City, and he was a good friend and he loved movies, so he loved to consult on projects that I was working on. So like if I was developing a script with a client, I would often bring him in. Like one time I brought the actor John Leguizamo to him. He was working on a murder story and he wanted some in-depth stuff, the kind of stuff that Armand could bring. And he met with Armand and I talked to John afterwards. And Armand had sat him down in front of police video of a guy who had just murdered his parents 45 minutes beforehand. This was real footage. And John said, "Oh my God, it messed me up." It was like I couldn't sleep that night. And it was like, whoa. And I said, "Well, was it good research?" He goes, "Oh, top shelf, like off the charts, crazy." And I worked with Armand a lot that way. And at one point he said to me, because he was doing character profiles on these. At one point he said to me, "Have you ever checked out the Enneagram? It's the best thing out there." I'd never heard of it before. And coming from him, he was really brilliant and really at the top of his game. And for him to say, "It's the best thing out there," I was like, whoa. It wasn't like, "Oh, I think I'll check it." I was like, boom, I was like right on it. And I studied it intensively for a couple years. And it purports that there's 9 basic personality types. And each of them has their own basic fears, basic desires, motivations, preferences, tendencies, weaknesses, flaws. And there's all these different, and not only all that, but each of the 9 types has different aspects, like they're either a healthy aspect, an average aspect, or an unhealthy aspect. And depending on what shape you're in emotionally and psychologically, your life is either coming together, you're integrating, or your life is falling apart, you're disintegrating. And if you are coming together as a person emotionally and psychologically, then you will tend to exhibit the average to healthy aspects of the type you are. If you are falling apart as a person, then you will tend to exhibit the average to unhealthy aspects of that personality type. So it is and they say that the average person flickers between all those all day long, where you can have extremely healthy reactions or actions in certain situations or extremely unhealthy, and you flicker back and forth all day long like real people, in and out of different emotional states and so on. But you will tend to be what you are. In other words, if you tend to be healthy, then most of your stuff will tend to be average to healthy. And it is so like the 9 types are like, they give them labels, but they don't use the labels very much. Type 1 they call the reformer, type 2 is the helper, type 3 is the achiever, type 4 is the individualist, type 5 is the thinker, or they have different names. Type 6 is the loyalist, type 7 is the enthusiast, type 8 is the leader or the challenger, type 9 is the peacemaker. But because each of those labels has certain connotations with different people, the people who work with it professionally, they'll call you a 1 or a 4 or a 7 because it's context-free in a certain way. The labels don't bring their own misunderstandings to people who are less skilled in the application of the technique. So that like a type 3, the achiever, can be very high performing. It'd be like a Tony Robbins type where they really work hard to actualize all their best capabilities. Tom Cruise is a type 3. People who can really achieve great things, push themselves to be the best they can be, and can really be extraordinary. But in the unhealthy, or in the average aspects, they can be really concerned with how they appear. They're constantly wanting to look good even if they aren't doing well emotionally. In the unhealthy aspects, they can actively lie to look good even when they're in really rough shape. They're really over-concerned with how they appear and will do even devious things to maintain that appearance. So that in the extremely unhealthy aspects, they can even be suicidal or murderous to maintain the illusion of their superiority or achieve their achievements, even if they're not there. So in terms of in both the creation of a character and the development and dimensionalization of a character, the basic human nature, which is built into the study of the Enneagram, and the cutting-edge psychology, which is built into it, inform what you both find in your character and can create in your character. For instance, going back to your IT guy, Derek, and the young woman, Skylar, one of the things I'd be looking at, and I'd be doing that once I get a dilemma up and running, I'm also looking in the early stages of developing a dilemma for Derek. I would go very quickly to which Enneagram type is he, because that's going to inform so much who he is and how he interacts with his dilemma and what his basic fears and basic desires and tendencies and motivations and disabilities and flaws and blind spots, all of that inform not only what the dilemma is, but how he will interact with it because of his basic fears and drives and all that. So let's see, if I'm looking at him, might he be a 1, the reformer? It's possible. 2, the helper, maybe. 3, the achiever. Possible 4, the individualist. Possible because he is an individualist, can be intuitive, artistic, want to sort out their own emotions before they deal with anything else. Possibly a type 5, a thinker, someone who is perfecting things before they launch out. Sherlock Holmes was a type 5, wants to have everything figured, like a type 4 wants to figure out their emotional stuff before they move ahead. A type 5 wants to figure out the mechanics of a situation and have a lot of knowledge because their basic fear is that they're not well prepared. So they're protecting themselves. So they want to know everything before they take a step. So they spend too much time figuring out before they take action. So they can be extremely world-changing when they're on top of their game and see things in a completely fresh way. But they can also be paranoid and reclusive and dissociated from who they really are because they're desperately trying to figure it all out in their head before they do their debut. So maybe he's a 5. He could be a 6, the loyalist, which lends itself to the IT, who's the guard watchdog for this mainframe and the whole company. One of the main motivating factors in a type 6 is they are constantly hoping that the next person they latch onto is going to be the one who can show them how to navigate life successfully. Are you the one? Can you help me learn how to make my life work? That goes with the watchdog for the corporation, but also Skylar, are you the one that's going to show me how to make my life work finally? So a 6 is a possibility. A 4 is a possibility because a 4 is inwardly tuned, has a lot of artistic sensitivities, and a lot of inner debate, and wants to make things work at an emotional level. I'm not describing it accurately enough, but this is really an overview too. But a 4 is an interesting possibility for Derek. A 6 is an interesting possibility. A 7, the enthusiast, is the busy, fun-loving type, which could be a very interesting possibility for Skylar. Someone who's like wildly enthusiastic, the life of the party, always busy. A healthy 7 is a lot of fun. An unhealthy 7 can be a drug addict. They're a constant escapist mode. A 7's main motivation is to, in the unhealthy aspect of their fears, they want to, what's the word, kind of dispel unease. They can't sit and deal with emotional complexity. They want to escape from it. They don't have the bone that enables them to sit there and figure it out. They're in escape mode a lot if they're average to unhealthy. So they're always looking for the next thing. They're always planning. Even if they've spent 3 months planning a big cruise with all their friends, they can't enjoy the cruise because they're busy planning the next thing. It's always about their plans. But they can be really fun to be around, and a healthy 7 is really fun and a really healthy, happy, integrated person. So I would think that she's going to be pretty unhealthy, but they look dazzlingly fun, especially to someone who is feeling miserable and trapped and caught in a rut and no way out. So it's kind of an interesting chemical connection where her malfunction meshes with his malfunction in a way that she looks like his savior and he may look like her savior. So they sync on a lot of levels and they fit each other's compulsive pattern in a certain way that even though it's an unhealthy relationship, they get a lot of mileage out of it before each realizes that, wow, I'm back where I started, or worse, because he's just as messed up as I am in a completely different way. And we've really screwed this thing up. You know, it's that kind of thing. So in many ways, it's a mixture of what you bring to the picture with your story and what the Enneagram offers as possibilities for character traits and possibilities for character. When you come with your story, you have a certain amount of something already. You're not coming with nothing and just looking at the Enneagram. For instance, with the story of Derek, you've already got a raw story, and we've done some work with dilemma. So you've got him trapped. And then if you find that he seems like a type 6 Enneagram, then the tendencies and basic fears and all the things that make up a 6 influence your story, and your story influences how you use those parts of the Enneagram. For instance, if you're looking at the mechanics of a type 6 and it offers some dynamic possibilities for what Derek might be like as he falls apart in a crucial moment of the story, then that could really inform the story choices that you make, and the story choices that you make can inform what parts of the Enneagram you use or amplify or play with. You know, so much of it is an experimental mix as you're really working with everything to gel that which you decide to run with. One of the key ways that I use the Enneagram is that if you've got a story idea that's up and running and you've worked on dilemma, then that's a point as you begin to get into dilemma for your protagonist, that's when it's very useful to look at the Enneagram, because the character traits of the type of your protagonist, the personality type, will inform and influence your insight into the dilemma. It can suggest possibilities. It can deepen and dimensionalize the dilemma. And the way that I tackle that is that I'll have that character in mind, like Derek, and then I'll look at the one sheet for each of the 9 types, and those come from the EnneagramInstitute.com website. I work with a slightly older one sheet from when I wrote my book around 2006. It fits on one sheet of paper, and it has a lot of information. What they have for their one sheet now is they've expanded upon it, so there's more complexity, which is great. I just like going back to the one sheets that are in my book, Writing a Great Movie, because it's short and sweet. Then once you've worked with that, you'll find the stuff on their website, which opens it up a little more to be very useful too. But what I do is that I put myself in the position of my character, or I think about my character, the lead character, and look at the one sheet for each of the 9 types. And I'll sometimes just use my book, or often I print out the one sheets because I've saved them. And I'll look at a type 1, thinking about Derek, and be like, okay, so reformer, there's some key aspects, maybe a couple of them I underline, that's a maybe. Look at the 2, go through that. 3, oh, that has more stuff, that's interesting. 4 has some distinct possibilities. 5, and maybe when I'm looking at a 5, even while I'm thinking about Derek, I may notice that, wow, that could really be the predator who's operating Skylar, and it just jumps out at me like, wow, there's that person. So you're just kind of like going through the 9 one sheets, mostly one character at a time, but sometimes other ones will just jump out at you. And so I found that I think Derek really seems like a 6, and you kind of like this, as you're looking through the one sheet, a whole bunch of stuff starts to light up for you. And then once you've figured out who your main characters are, which type your main characters are, even if you have a couple possibilities, like at first you're not sure, you think Derek might be a 4 or a 6, and you play with that for a while. And then usually your understanding of it will crystallize after a while, where perhaps you see how Derek reacts in a key moment, and that really resonates with a tendency of a type 6. And then you really see, yeah, I really think he is a type 6, not a type 4. So your understanding gradually crystallizes. At first it's tentative, and you keep the possibilities open, because you're not trying to force any of these types on your characters. You're just trying to listen to who your characters are and listen to what the Enneagram is saying as possibilities for them, which type they might be, and so on. But after a while, you will, your understanding will crystallize. And at that point, it's really interesting to go to the book, The Wisdom of the Enneagram, which is written by the same guys from the Enneagram Institute. And it's a big, thick book, and there's a 40-page chapter on each type, which takes you much, much deeper than the one sheet did. And it really goes so deep into so many aspects of that character type that it helps you dimensionalize them. It shows the reasons why these tendencies are there and why their fear is there, and the way in which they fall apart when things really go bad for them, and the way in which they can go from being in an extremely unhealthy reactive state to a healthy, proactive integration where they can pull themselves together and become a healthy aspect of themselves. And scripts deal with character arcs, so where a person's flaws and weaknesses and disabilities and all that are either resolved if there's a creative resolution and they become a more healthy version of themselves, or they disintegrate and become, fall apart completely in a tragic resolution. But the 40-page chapter is really a deep and complex journey through the full mechanics of what makes this person tick. And it really gives you tremendous depth and dimension and flaws and strengths and hopes and subconscious attitudes and how they react in a bad situation and how they can pull themselves out of a tailspin in certain types of situations. So it really is very comprehensive. And one of the things that's most interesting about working with the Enneagram is that I've done it hundreds of times for so many different characters. And for instance, when I'm going through the 40-page chapter for a character that's maybe a 5, maybe I've already done 15 different characters that are 5s and really studied them in depth and really know them well. But maybe one was like a serial killer in, the bombings of Ireland, and one is a schizophrenic baker in Argentina, and completely in a comedy. And so that the characters come in such completely different contexts that when I start going back through something that I've been through a whole bunch of times, like the 40-page chapter on a type 5, it's like I've never seen it before because it's completely different, because I'm inhabiting this baker now instead of this bomber. And it's literally like I've never seen this stuff before, which is so interesting because I've been soaking my head in it for years. So it's fresh each time, which is great because that's what you want when you're developing characters. It's not just a rehash of people you already know, but a completely fresh discovery from a completely new character. And not only are you pulling new material out of what you've already been through, but your facility with the tool grows and expands each time. So, you just have more facility, more ability to understand more complexities, and also the ability to just see it more simply and clearly, like, oh, it's just that, instead of like it's all this stuff. So your capacity to work with the tool both clarifies and deepens into more complexity. Because sometimes the ability to just see things clearly and simply is the aha moment that you've been working toward maybe for years in terms of using this tool, where you start to understand the different personality types more clearly, even if you have to work hard to get there each time, but you're a little better at it each time. And yet it's always new. That's endlessly fascinating. Okay, so that's a good tour through the Enneagram.